So this is the cave, the video game cave. Took a long time to get this way. This is just the entrance. I got some, you're gonna see a lot of standees and promo items. Like this Mortal Kombat standee was actually in the office of John Tobias, who was one of the creators of the game, and he signed it. There's historical stories behind a lot of these. I, collected these over more than a decade now. And I feel like the store units, the store displays, and video games were all about selling them visually and the sounds. That's what sold the games. It was very experiential, and that's definitely what drew me in. Seeing these in the stores back in the day, it brings up those memories and taps into it almost as much as actually playing the games themselves. You got Tyson here. There aren't a lot of full-size standees for original NES games, for example, and here you even see, the variants on Mike Tyson's are a big deal. This has the white bullets, which is the first print, and we don't even know of a single sealed copy of that exists. Try to highlight with these cabinets sort of the biggest games, the most important games back in the day, the most recognizable games. So you'll see your Zeldas and your Castlevanias and Final Fantasy. I mean, this is really the golden age of video game collecting, is the NES. And that's why some of the NES games are the most valuable, right? They spawned series that are still alive today. This is the first Zelda game ever. That's the first Final Fantasy game ever. The first Metroid game ever. But I grew up more with Super Nintendo and N64, so this is a complete set of N64 games. And in these old store display units, I have some of the favorites. These are all Mario games for the most part, and here we have Super Mario 64. This is not sealed. This is complete in box. It's not perfect sealed grade like the $1.5 million Mario that just sold. And over here we've got some of my personal favorites as well. Zelda. We have Goldeneye. Played so many hours of that, and I know a lot of people have too. Banjo-Kazooie. Things kids played back then as well. As I grew up, initially growing up with comic books and exposed to collectibles that way, so Nintendo Power was a perfect crossover, because you have the comics and then you have the magazines, and I spent, like here's the first Nintendo Power that ever came out. So it's right when Mario 2 was released, and you have your little clay Mario that looks pretty different from what Mario looks like today. And then this is the accessory wall. It's just all sorts of different accessories, and I've got my black box games and third-party hang tab games here for NES. A couple sealed Contra, sealed Final Fantasy, and then this is more esoteric. It's very historic. These cardboard hang tabs, those are the first third-party games that Nintendo sort of allowed, and it's very collector driven in terms of the people who care about that are people who really care about the history of game collecting. And then the black box games are the first 30 titles that Nintendo released, and they're very iconic. So you'll see some of them here, the Donkey Kongs, Marios. That's Super Mario Brothers, the first Super Mario that everyone recognizes. That one's not sealed, but we've got a sealed one over there somewhere. Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Man, I pumped so many hours. This is a display box, so it's not a typical box, but the PlayStation 1 version, I spent so many hours. Amazing soundtrack. Those who know. And then this here is a full complete in box NES set. So it's every licensed and most of the unlicensed NES games that were ever released, including variants. So if you see something where there's two copies, you take Jaws, and this one has a Rev A and this one has a no Rev A. So little differences like that are becoming much more significant as people realize they want the first print before the Rev A came out. And when we're talking about sealed populations on this, you're talking less than 10 known sealed copies in the no Rev A version. So again, as people care more about the history of these games and the collecting side of it, they're going to care a lot more about that. Up there we have Stadium Events, which is the rarest licensed NES game. I do have a complete in box copy there, but this is my spare cartridge that I found when I was like 13 and I just started collecting. So that's how I got kind of a name in the collecting community. They were like, oh, that's the kid who found Stadium Events for $2, which was true. I didn't even think it was the real one because there's a European version that looks really similar. I was like, I must have gotten that one. It was the real deal. And then here, this is one of my grails. So these are all cardboard, hang tab, sealed black box games, which are very, very difficult to come by. But Super Mario Bros. Is you know, in hang tab is considered one of the true holy grails. So if you slide this open, I can actually pull it out. This is the cardboard hang tab. So they had a perforation in the boxes. It indicates an earlier print because they switched when they initially released these games. They intended them to be sort of hung on the wall, but they never actually did that. They attached these plastic hangers to the back instead. When you have a hang tab, you know it's an early print of a game that's been printed. You know, Mario has over 12 different printings of this box. So the hang tab is really only for the first 5 or so prints, first 6 prints. And so when you have a hang tab unopened, who bought Mario and didn't open it, you know? Not only resonates with people because it's Mario and it's pop culture and the first one, but it resonates with collectors a lot more because they always want the first print. They always want the earliest attainable, and usually that means rarity as well. You know, just like in comics, you have the 2 holy grails, Detective 27 and the first Batman, and Action Comics #1, the first Superman. Well, in video games you have the first Zelda and you have the first Mario, and I think it's really similar. This is the second print. There's only one known first print, sealed, that Wata certified, and this is the second print, and you can tell because there's not a Rev A here, and next to Nintendo Entertainment System there's an R. The first print will have a TM, and that's the only difference. But very few of these exist, and this one's got some rough condition. The seal's a little torn, and it's not in the best shape. But I'm one of those guys who cares a lot more about rarity than condition, just because, again, this is who didn't open Zelda when it just came out. Everything sort of has a story. I remember, where I was when I bought something, or I remember going to a specific garage sale or a specific Craigslist meetup for a lot of this stuff, and specific stories of buying them on eBay even. The most special stuff to me, though, is original video game art. So this is the cover to Micky Mania, and it's the only piece of original art that I have for a game that I grew up with. So I would say in my whole collection, this is my holy grail, this piece of art. So they actually painted these paintings, and that's what would spawn the video game itself. That's what they would use for the box art. So they're one of one, and they're extremely hard to come by. So you'll see some examples of that. Right over here you have the cover art to Rap Jam, and you can see this is what the published art looks like right here. They didn't fill in the ball, so it looks a little strange, but it's a perfect crossover between sports and games, and that's a whole other thing. Sports games are some of the most beloved games. We spent so many hours, and people forget sort of how rare some of them are sealed. People play them. NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, to name some of my favorites. Tecmo Bowl's a big one, right? Who doesn't remember sitting in their dorm rooms and playing Tecmo Bowl? And that's another example of Dino City. It's just so 90s. It's just beautiful. This one is actually really cool right here. I just thought of this. So this is a complete long box set. So all of the original PlayStation games came in these long boxes like this. So the first Resident Evil, and if we're talking about this game, this is complete in box. If we're talking about it sealed, it's easily a 6-figure game. Same, here's another one that's real big, Twisted Metal. Again, 6-figure games, because who didn't open these? But this is one that I like, the esoteric stuff. This is 2-Ball. It was a game that was never released. It was horrible. So there's like less than 10 of these known, and I just think something like that is just super cool. Sample only. Piece of crap, don't play it, but again, another piece of history right there. And then I would say for sure my favorite system to collect for is Game Boy. I'm still missing one game, and I'm trying not to buy it because then it's over. You just don't find these boxes. It took me about 10 years to put this set together, and I think there's only like 5 other people who have ever put together a complete in-box Game Boy set, because some of these items just, Game Boy is something that was meant to be portable, so no one had a reason to keep the boxes, right? Unlike NES games, people actually kept them and kept their games in them. So, I would say 50 to 100 of these titles don't even show up on eBay once in a year. And it makes it almost too hard to collect if you want to go for a full set. And then you've got games like Shaq FU, which is actually insanely hard to find And this is a sealed copy. It's hard to find just in the box, let alone unopened. Horrible game, but it's Shaq. I mean, and look at him. He looks. It's so goofy. Again, going to the sports. There's so much sports crossover, and I love that. I love the fact that there's a crossover with comics. If you're a comic collector, there's, I could look at this wall and find all the Batman games, and I'm sure it won't take me long to find a comic game. Here, you got 3 Batman games right here, right? So wherever you come from, whether you collect cards or sports cards or sports memorabilia or comic books, that's insanely, it's Larry Walker, but it's an insanely rare game. And bases loaded here. I'm looking at all the. There's so much crossover. If you like movies, there's every movie and every big TV show was turned into a game. Here's the first FIFA game that was ported. It was released on the Genesis, and FIFA is such a big franchise now, and so you're going back to these days. The first 2K game, which I don't have handy here, has Allen Iverson on the cover, and it's Dreamcast, and now we're looking at 2K21, right? This game is awesome. It's actually not a bad game. I mean, people might disagree, but it's a platformer, so you're actually running around as Jordan with, throwing basketballs that are on fire. And then my favorite game, back when I could have, buy these for a lot cheaper, I wanted to fill this up with 8 Super Mario Worlds, all sealed, the original print. These are variants, so this DuckTales doesn't have the banner. The other ones have banners like this. This is the Mega Man 3 where they had an offer on most of the copies, but on this one they removed the offer. These are later prints, but they're so unique that I think that's really cool. Here you have, I put both Gunsmokes. They changed this Gunsmoke to this Gunsmoke because this one had bar written in the back, and that was too racy for Nintendo, who's very kid-friendly. So they really quickly changed it to this artwork, and it makes this first print really difficult to attain. So I love stuff like that. But I get really crazy with my collecting. I'll collect, these are Australian, they're called HES, Home Entertainment System, Home Entertainment Suppliers, I mean. And these are literally Australian NES games, but they come in these weird clamshells, and some of them come with these dongles that to override the lockout chip, and or the region chip, so really, I just go into all sorts of different directions. And there's a game here that it's not all about rarity, right? This soccer, there might be 4 or 5 of these that exist, but it's not worth nearly as much as Super Mario World, because it's not relevant to pop culture. No one remembers playing this, right? It's funny, every time someone comes here that grew up with NES, the other day we had someone and he's going, what game was it? He's going, oh my god, Solar Jet Man. Everyone has those weird games that you're like, who played this? Someone was freaking out about Adventures of Bio Billy. Like, that was not, that's not Mario, that's not, but they made, 700 games, so you're gonna have games that your parents bought you, or that you got on Christmas, or that you rented and you brought home and you realized it was a crap game, but you had nothing else, so you played hours and hours of it and you remember it, So it's really cool to see what people get drawn to, the different items, the different games. It's always different, right? And it's different for generations. Some younger guys come and they get obsessed with that Gamecube wall over there because that's what they grew up with. And I played a lot of Gamecube too, of course. So it's very cool to see.